Squawk squawk, fellow sorrowers. This one's going to be on a topic that I haven't covered yet. The topic of addiction. So, first of all, when the word addiction comes up, because of the way we've been conditioned and indoctrinated as a race, the first association and identification to the word addiction is predominantly and majority of the time drugs, right? People fail to see most of the time that, of course, addiction is a lot more vast than that. You can be addicted to sex, violence, as I always say, gambling. And gambling's a funny one because it doesn't have to be money, it doesn't have to just be money. It can be the sensation seeking of putting your life at risk. Even the sensation seeking of putting other human beings' lives at risk. I mean, you also have healthy addictions. I mean, it's still technically an addiction, you know. I have an addiction to making my art pieces. I have an addiction to making these videos. I have an addiction to pleasing others. You know. The word itself is not synonymous with negativity, okay? But it can lead to it, because too much of anything is dangerous. You know, too much of anything can harm you. Some of you know this already from, again, relating back to what I said to my art pieces. When I was making the Archon series, it really did affect me spiritually, and I didn't expect it. I'm very stubborn. I know it can take place, and I've experienced it before, but not like I did, you know, making that particular exhibit of my sculptures. It really took it out of me, and I felt an addiction to it. You know, I mean, it's all, for those of you that most of you must know by now, I can't stand the word religion or the concept of it. You know, I consider myself spiritual, as so should you, in my opinion, but not religious. Religion, yeah, the reversal of unity is what it is. It's a division tactic. The reason I bring that up is because your addictions are they're portals, you know, for infection, but also affection. You know, it's a bit of a grey area, but it can be harnessed, it can be honed. You can replace a negative addiction with a positive one, you know. So I'll go through a few with you, and I like to only speak of which I've experienced myself. You know, I mean, I've never gambled in my life, money wise. I have quite an addictive personality myself, so I always knew that wouldn't be a very good decision to make. At the same time, money's never really meant anything to me, you know. It certainly doesn't, you know, add weight to your ego or inches to your dick. So yeah, I understand why people have that addiction to making money, but that one in particular is probably, ironically, one of the most common. As I say, it doesn't have to be gambling of money. The reason I believe it to be most common as an addiction is because it's celebrated in most organisations and companies and workplaces. You know, be the best of the best, step on everyone else, climb to the top, all that shit. That's all psychopathy, all of it. You know, it's all corporate psychopathy, to keep the machine running by being a good cog, you know, working your hardest and turning up on time and doing as you're told and all that. I mean, I did a lot of telesales growing up, and it never worked because I told the truth. They don't want you to tell the truth. But it's all scientific and it's all atomic, as per usual. Once again, you know, it's about your dopamine levels. I think I've gone through this part before, so I'll be quick. For example, it's always fascinated me to ponder and wonder the concept of selflessness. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, as I say, I don't want to repeat myself, but you know, what is truly a selfless act? Because it becomes addictive to, well, to please people, right? And surely that's a positive act, or at least a positive projection of an addiction, right? But then of course it goes the other way, because, and this happened with me, as I say, I'll only speak of which I, you know, of what I've experienced personally. I've always been very empathic and pacifistic, and my true joy comes from pleasing others rather than being pleased by others. And surely that's an optimistic, innocent, positive thing, right? However, I did it so much for so long that it got to a stage, hate that word, I hate the word hate too, I shouldn't, you know, it's low vibration, I apologise. I dislike the word stage for obvious reasons, but okay, it got to my empathy, and this is what I'm talking about, because I promote empathy as much as I possibly can. It's what makes us not only human, but it delivers us from a sinner to a saint. And ironically, once again, I made a video called exactly that, and I believe that's when I mentioned this briefly. But my point being, as I said, about too much of anything becoming self-destructive, dangerous, a risk, a threat, I helped so many, so much. It got to a point in my life when I was a bit younger where out of nowhere I just switched the other way. You know, it was like I felt empty because I wasn't getting that back from people, and I didn't expect it either. I didn't. You know, if you expect it back, this is what I'm talking about with true selflessness. You know, like I'm not saying this is wrong, but even for example, off the top of my head, again, I'll use myself. Me and Joy were walking back from a nightclub a couple of years ago, and I might have mentioned this too before, and yeah, we saw this young girl, half conscious, laying on the pavement, and people walking by and not even, you know, giving her a second look. And as we approached her, we saw that she had a big bottle of vodka next to her and loads of empty silver prescription packets. So she was trying to, you know, give herself an overdose. Anyway, long story short, of course, we stopped, and I kept her conscious. You know, I was talking to her and trying to keep her coherent. You know, and all the time I'm doing that, Joy called an ambulance. The ambulance come, picked her up, blah blah blah, saved her life. You know, about a week later she got hold of us, and you know, she was thanking us. You know, I really appreciate what you did, and blah blah blah. Okay, so the reason I use that as an example is because I couldn't have lived with myself if I didn't at least attempt to try and save her life, as I'm sure Joy felt the same. But is that selfless? As I said, it's not wrong, it's not selfish, but is it selfless? You see what I'm saying? I did that for her, but I did that for me too, because I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I had dismissed the situation. Do you see what I'm saying? True selflessness is a very rare thing, you know. In all contexts, like, again, not a very good example, but say you know you get your partner a gift, or your friend a gift, or a family member a gift, you know, you do it because you want to see them smile, right? You want to see their reaction, you know, you want to know that you've pleased them. Again, nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but you want to see that, don't you? That's why you did it. You did it for them, but you gain from knowing you've made that person happy. So there's still gain involved. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, not to digress, it does tie into the subject of which this video is based on, which is addiction. So yeah, as I said, it's associated mainly and mostly with drugs, but yeah, it's also, I mean, you can be addicted to almost anything, almost everything, you know, and some of it is healthy, and some of it not so much. But I suppose what I'm attempting to address in particular regarding addiction is that side of you, that part of you that, and it's not your conscience, by the way. It might seem like it, sounds like it, but if you try and focus on how it makes you feel, you'll realise it don't feel like it. Your conscience is it runs parallel with your sense of survival and instinct and intuition. This thing is not your fucking conscience, okay? This is the receptors in your brain that have been trained over time and routine to react in a certain way, almost to a parasitical reaction, and it talks to you, doesn't it? Do you know what I'm getting at? it talks to you. It says, don't, we'll use drugs. We'll just use drugs because it's the most common thing, as I say. As an example, we'll use drugs. So, you know, even down to just smoking. You know, see where this voice, lack of a better term, as I say, it is scientific, it is biological, it is atomic, but this voice, okay, how many of you act on your impulses of addiction when your chips are down, right? Is that is that where your urge comes from? Is that where your craving comes from? When your chips are down, do you know what I mean? You've had a shit day, fuck it, I'll have a fag. I ain't smoked for a while, but I'll have one. Or, you know, whatever the addiction is, whatever the drug is, as I say, we'll use that as an example. Is it when your chips are down, or is it when your chips are up? Because it goes the other way too, as it has for me. For me, it was more when my chips are up. I've had a fucking brilliant day, yeah, I'll have a drink, you know, I'll have a smoke, or a line, or a pill, or whatever it may be, to celebrate, right? But the main trick, the main tool that addiction will use, you know, that the voice will use, your receptors will use against you, is using both when your chips are down and when your chips are up. Then you're fucked. Then it becomes a real problem, because of course it doubles up. You do it twice as much, right? That's when it's got ya. Yeah, that's when it's got ya. I mean, again, like, in terms of drugs, I had an addiction to antidepressants. I've had an addiction to MDMA. I've had an addiction to cocaine. I've had I've never felt addicted to cannabis, and I've never felt addicted to alcohol. It runs in my family, but I've never. It just, people are different, I guess. You know, different susceptibility. I've never had them two in particular, which again, as far as addiction to drugs goes, are the most common, right? However, yeah, watch out for that. Watch out for that. That sort of, it almost feels like it's like a naughty feeling, you know, almost like a childhood. Oh, I'm bunking off from school or something. You feel it, right? This little push. I've gone over this before. You get this little, like, go on, fucking, why not? You deserve it, yeah. Whether it's chips up or chips down, you deserve it. That's where it gets you, because you do, majority of the time, predominantly of the time, you do deserve it. But it doesn't mean that it's your friend. It's not. It's your enemy. This thing is it's trying to kill you. It is, and it'll kill you a lot quicker than whatever the addiction is. You know, as I said, it's like a parasitic influence. It's the dark side of the shadow. Again, which I've mentioned before, the shadow can be educational and it can be therapeutic, because it's the truth of you, the things that you don't want to face, your regrets, your tragedies, your traumas. Okay, but part of that defense mechanism is this self-entitlement, you know, that you deserve it. Again, another trick, another tool of the trade that the voice will use. I mean, the one addiction that intrigues me the most is sex. Sexual addiction intrigues me the most, and one of the truth researchers that I follow, that I actually found from Truth Dog, his channel's called Waking Up, if you want to look this up. He's British like me. I think he's an East Londoner as well, like me. He's a bit full on, but again, so get a bit too full on, it's too much. But then I'd prefer that to, you know, to be in, what would the opposite of full on be? It doesn't beat around the bush, and I prefer the directness, you know. Anyway, the point being, he addresses especially he addresses addiction, but sexual addiction in particular. He does will do a lot, you know, a lot better of a job at this than I am. I mean, in particular, he focuses on a thing called sissy porn, which is quite rampant these days. It's based on humiliation, really, and I'm not afraid to say myself, otherwise I wouldn't make these videos. I told you at the beginning when I made my channel, I think I believe I said it in my first video, I will never lie to you. I'll always tell you the truth, even if it drives you away, turns you away, you know. See, there's that thing again. I feel selfless in saying that, but I gain from that because it gives me a sense of pride that I can be honest. Because there's another one, lying. Lying's a very, very potent as an addiction, and I've been so deceptive before in my life, which is why for me this is, you know, where I can be honest now. But yeah, sissy porn is feminising men through pornographic footage and imagery, and it's all subconscious and you won't see it coming. Again, like, I know it's a bit, hopefully it's not too full on or gross, but I'm just trying to be as I'm not trying to be full frontal, because it's not necessary to be, but I am trying to be honest, and I believe that might lead to it coming across to be full frontal. As far as sexual addiction goes, I had and still have to a certain to a certain mark, this strange, this deranged, I don't know what you want to call it, fantasy, a fetish. I mean, Lilith runs all that, you know, and that's why it works so well, because it's mainly men that sexual addiction affects. It's women too, but it's mainly men, and Lilith knows that. For me, I don't know where it come from exactly, but it was based on the one that I love, care about, you know, who I'm in a relationship with, essentially cheating on me, you know. But it's that whole kind of thing, you know what I'm getting at. It's like knowing it, watching it, you know. That is a type of sissy porn itself. It does defeminise you, and it essentially attacks your self-esteem, and if you're a male, especially your masculinity, of course. But all this, yeah, all these fantasies and fetishes, that's the whole point, because if it ever happened, it would absolutely tear you asunder, right? And it's that forbiddenness that arouses people. You see what I'm saying? And that's why I believe and consider sexual addiction to be the most potent, you know, because that in itself is an umbrella, isn't it, of all these different sexual preferences, and as I said before, you know, fetishes, fantasies. It leads you to become so deviant as well. Okay, so I'll give you an example, right? And this isn't me. It probably sound like I'm doing that thing when you talk about someone else, but it's you. Not, I would tell you. I would. I'll give you 2 examples. Okay, so I knew a fella who, pardon me, who was very handsome. Women loved him, you know, and he was a bit of a player, a bit of a lad. But he was addicted to watching gay porn, right? But he wasn't gay. He didn't consider himself homosexual, and 2, I knew he wasn't. Like he wasn't. And to back that up, and this is what I'm getting at, right? The forbiddenness, because that's what fed him. He was so disgusted by it. Not saying, you know, necessarily is that way if you happen to be homosexual, but my point is, because he wasn't, he was so disgusted by it, that it becomes so forbidden that it become an addiction to him. Do you see that? That makes sense? So it's so covert how it affects people, sexual addiction, you see. It's that forbiddenness that drives them, that arouses them. You know, again, I'll give you another example, and I truly hope that you know, but I'd tell you if it was me, if it was a personal thing. I don't know anyone where this has happened, but it's just a theory I have. So, for those of you that know, especially this day and age, but it's been going on for a long time, most porn works on taboos, yeah, what's restricted, you know. So, for example, the porn that's focused on teens, you know, and even women that you can tell are not in their teen years, but they will dress like schoolgirls and all that kind of thing, right? So I'd imagine, again, the forbiddenness of that could lead a person to become aroused by children, you know. Isn't that bizarre? So it's not, they weren't, you know what I mean, like they weren't paedophilic, right, to start with, but because it disgusted them so much and because it was so forbidden, it attracted them, and next thing you know, they're addicted to that. And then of course it sets a standard, a tolerance in the receptors of your brain, and you need more and more and more, and next thing you know, they're molesting a young child. I don't know that to be true, but to me there's a logic there. And again, please don't think because I say there's a logic, it's something that should, you know what I mean, there's no way of condoning that. I'm a victim of abuse myself, and there's no way of condoning that, but hopefully you can see what I mean when I say the word logic. You know, a pattern, if you will, a calculation. But this is how fucking dangerous and destructive and powerful and potent sexual addiction can be and become. See where I'm coming from? Yeah, so give me one moment, I'll be right back. I'm going to pause it for a second, won't be a second. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, to get back to where we were, and I know this video is going on a bit, but I just want to cover how, you know, how important it is to face your addiction, to address it, to acknowledge it, because it works on a subconscious level, and you know what's going on, but as I say, the voice that the voice that it uses isn't your own, okay? And it's a fucking doorway, it really is. Yeah, I am talking about the archons, but I'm also talking about it's also a doorway to, as I said, your sense of self-entitlement. It's not arrogance. It can become it. It usually does, but it plays on, addiction always plays on what you deserve, you know. It tries to convince you that whatever the addiction is, it fulfills you, you know, it satisfies you. And as we all know, I mean, the nature of addiction in itself is that, as I said before, it's parasitical. Yeah, not only does it feed off you, but it needs to be well, it doesn't last, right? It doesn't last in any sense of the word addiction. Again, of course, drugs are a prime example, you know, especially stimulants. Cocaine's a prime example. Again, I'll speak of my own experiences. Well, you know, innit, like, there's the obvious, you do a line, it's so moreish, makes you want to do more, you know. I've been up 3 nights in a row, I've spent all my money on it to feed that moorishness, you know. And you always need more as well, not just as in the next fix, but as I said, it sets a standard, it sets a tolerance, and if you don't match that standard and that tolerance, then it doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore, you see. But it breaks hearts and it tears lives apart. Again, in particular, coming back to sexual addiction, I've known 3 people, well, 3 couples, sorry, 2, I've known 2, but I'm sure there's plenty more, where their fantasies, their fetishes got the best of them, I suppose, in regards to okay, so for example, right, so I know of one couple, yeah, madly in love, you know, they were going to get married, but they were quite into the fantasy and the fetish of like a threesome, right? And again, we're especially men, just saying, women too, but men, essentially we've been indoctrinated and conditioned into this this sexual psychological operation that threesomes are cool, you know, it makes you the lad, right? So yeah, this couple, madly in love, they were going to get married a couple of weeks down the line from when they chose to do this, but yeah, they had a threesome. The bloke had a threesome, so it was him, his girlfriend, and one of his best mates, right? And I'm sure they were intoxicated and all the rest of it, but nonetheless, that's not to blame, you know. Drugs, including alcohol, but drugs amplify how you're feeling at the time. It's not to say that what you say and do is based on the drug itself. You know what I'm saying? Like it influences you, but only, again, same as parasites, same as viruses. You know, they can't survive without a host. So it uses you as a host, but it's still coming from something that's in you anyway. Yeah, so he had this threesome with his best mate and you know, the love of his life, and you know, thought it'd be an experience and all that just before they get married, and it absolutely destroyed them, all three of them. Yeah, he split up with the woman because he couldn't look at her the same way. You know, it's like broken toy syndrome. Once it's broke, you don't want to play with it anymore, you know. And same with his best friend. Can't stand to look at him. You see what I'm saying? And yeah, this other couple, same thing. They went to Amsterdam. Again, madly in love. You know, try new things. Let's you know, let's jazz it up. And I think they, bit different, but yeah, I think they paid for a prostitute, and yeah, threesome, and then split up because they couldn't look at each other the same way. This is what it does. This is what it does. And one of the reasons I'm making this video, aside from the fact that I realised I haven't addressed addiction as a topic and a subject, which I really should have before, because as I say, it is a portal, it is a gateway, it is a door for the archons to play on you. You know, evil in general, even your own. But yeah, one of the main reasons I wanted to do this video, and as you've noticed, I'm talking about sexual addiction particularly, is because as I always say, sex and violence would be the next one. Sex and violence creates, I mean, together, codependently, is a force to be reckoned with entirely, which is why rape is so rampant, you see, because it's a combination of both. But as addictions, sexual addiction and addiction of violence are certainly the most potent, and in that order I'd say sex would come first. Violence as an addiction is slightly different. Like it again, it's women too, but it's mainly men. It ties into, you know, it plays on your testosterone, and again, the indoctrination and the conditioning that most men go through in this matrix of what it is to be a man, right? Again, I'll take myself as an example. As I said before, I'm very empathic, I'm very pacifistic. I've been in fights, but they've always been in defence, never offence. I've never bullied anyone or anything like that. But in them situations, especially if you're defending yourself or you have a just cause, yeah, a righteous response, I mean, violence never is, but, you know, let's say you're defending a loved one. It's one thing to defend yourself, but if you're defending a loved one, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it feels good. Of course it feels good. Wrath does feel good. It is powerful. It makes you feel powerful. And in control. But you're not, are you? You're not in control. Which is also why vengeance has been once again indoctrinated to us, and we've been conditioned that it is it's noble, you know. It's not even that it isn't, but that's how it's sold to us through, in particular, through films, right, and through movies. But it leaves you empty. Revenge leaves you empty. You don't gain anything, you see. But yeah, violence in itself is almost, I wouldn't say as powerful as sexual addiction, but almost as powerful as an addiction. This isn't me. I'd tell you honestly, I'm not speaking from myself when I say this part, but for example, like take men that beat their partners, right? There's an addiction even in that, and for both parties, because it becomes addictive to the victim. And it's not just men beating on women. Women abuse men too. It's usually psychologically, but also it can be physical, can be physically, and in a way that's worse, because again, as I said before, it ties into the sense of masculinity and what it is to be, you know, a proud breadwinner, hunter and gatherer. If a man is physically abused by a woman, majority of the time they're not going to tell anyone, because they're embarrassed by it. They shouldn't be, but they are, right? But it does happen. So my point being that we'll use women because I'd imagine it's a little bit more common. But saying that, when a woman physically abuses a man constantly, you know, not a one-off, I'd imagine that's usually probably what leads a man to physically harm a woman. No condonance towards that whatsoever, but if you consider that factor, I'd imagine men impulsively react, feeding off their sense of pride and testosterone, and, you know, I'm so embarrassed to be, you know, to be getting abused by a female. That's probably when they smack the bird in the mouth. You see what I mean? No condonance whatsoever. But you see how infectious addiction is. Like, it affects everyone around you. It really does. So yeah, sexual addiction and addiction of violence in particular, I'd say, are the most addictive. You know, I mean, there's as I said, there's so many of them. I mean, you can be addicted to food. You know, again, it's biology. It's cellular. It's to do. It's science, and of course nature, which are almost the same thing. I always related science to technology, in particular like artificial intelligence and whatnot, but it really isn't, because science was there before we were, but it needed someone to discover it. So it was always there. In that sense, it's very akin to nature. It's only us that coined science to the artificial, you see. Where was I going with that? Sorry, I know this is a long video, but hopefully it's relevant and prevalent. Sorry, give me a second. That's right, yeah. Yeah, taking like the wife beater situation sort of thing. So the woman can even become addicted to the hope that the man who she's in love with will change. You see, there's an addiction to hope, and vice versa. Of course, I'm just using that, to save time. So yeah, it's very vast. It's very broad. Coming back to drugs, the main, at least personally, the main addiction to the ones I've mentioned that I had, like the reason that an addiction was activated in me, or I allowed it to become activated in me, was because, and I imagine it's the same reason for most that do take whatever drugs they take, even if it's just drinking. It's that sense of like it numbs you out, especially if it's a stimulant, because of course it creates euphoria. That's what got me addicted to MDMA, because it gave me that lovey-dovey. Those of you that that have experienced this will know what I'm talking about, like that euphoria. That's what I was addicted to, that sense of being able to, or at least it makes you believe that you can truly communicate with others and connect with others. The problem with that is that it's not real. It's not real. You see what I'm saying? Like it's an extension. It's well, it's an influencer. As I said before, it's not what you say and what you do is false under the influence of any drug. It amplifies what's already there, but the fact that it's amplifying it means that it's not truly how you feel. You see what I'm saying? It's not truly who you are. It's very important to remember that, because this voice will try to convince you that it's you, and it really fucking isn't. It really isn't. But yeah, addiction always plays on your guilt, your shame, your blame, your regrets, your mistakes, your tragedy, your loss, your bereavement, and most of all your trauma. Again, I'll give you another quick example. It's strange because, okay, so as I said before, again, I won't even use drugs, I'll just say nicotine, just say smoking, right? Most people smoke because, again, we've been indoctrinated and conditioned into believing that it's a stress reliever. So is breathing. If you just take 10 fucking breaths, nice deep breaths, does the exact same thing, and it isn't killing you, right? But just because of the cliche of a drug, that doesn't mean that's what your addiction is. Again, this is how addiction sprouts off into different directions based on different catalysts of who you are. As I said, it's not who you are, but who you are is open for influence when you practice, because it's also about the practitioner. That's what births an addiction. It's, as I said, the practitioner, the routine, the consistency, right? But yeah, I'll give you a prime example. So yeah, smoking. Okay, so my father, I've mentioned this before, my father died when I was 5, and he died of lung cancer, right? But my addiction, smoking, wasn't nicotine, it wasn't a stress reliever or anything like that. The addiction come because when I used to smoke, it used to it made me feel closer to him, to my father. You see what I'm getting at? It. You see how fucking you see how I'm trying to think the right words. Well, it's so tailored, perhaps, to you. You know, well, to me, to you it'd be tailored differently. But you see how addiction plays on us as human beings. So yeah, that was it. I used to quit for months on end. It weren't a hard thing. Fucking, I really need a fag, you know. Or I'm so stressed out. I never got that. That never happened. What it was the memories I have of my father. He was always smoking, and somehow that got into my psyche. And when I used to smoke, I felt closer to him, or almost like his presence was there. You know, addiction also works on your nostalgia, and nostalgia works on your senses of taste, smell, sound, sight, and touch. And I remember the smell of the smoke. You see what I mean? It used to comfort me. You see? I'd imagine that works a lot with alcoholics too. I'd imagine it's a very similar tailored addiction. Yeah, don't just whatever your addiction is, because everyone has one. And as I said, they're not all addictions are negative and pessimistic and self-destructive or destructive to others. They don't have to be. They don't have to be, you know. I mean, technically a hobby is an addiction. You see what I'm saying? The word shouldn't be demonized, but at the same time, it should be it needs to be evaluated with whatever your urge and craving is to whatever the addiction is. You know. Yeah, trying to think if there's any. Well, I'm sure there's many that I've missed, but I'm trying to go for the main ones that may have affected you or may affect others. Maybe they haven't affected you yet, but hopefully this video will prepare you, at least, you know, to some extent, for if you feel like you're falling victim to one of the addictions that's been mentioned. Yeah, okay. Sorry to keep umming and ahhing. I just try and be natural, and I haven't planned this out. Again, it's off kilter to the research I've been studying. Like, this doesn't. Please stop it. Stop it, Sorrow. Yeah, this video doesn't really tie into the main topic, subject, basis of my research, on machine mummy mean, or the Archons, the reptilians, or the Canaanites. This is more about me, and I was going to say hopefully more about you, but hopefully not. Hopefully you haven't had to go through this, but if you have, hopefully it's as comforting to you to hear it as it is for me to say it. Yeah. Give me a second. Okay, yeah, sorry, I just took a moment to I took a moment to try and dissect what we're speaking of, and try and find a few other addictions that aren't usually brought to light. So the addiction of narcissism is an interesting one. That all self-serving, again, we've been indoctrinated and conditioned into the belief that the best way to live is survival of the fittest. Yeah, but as I've said before, in my opinion at least, survival of the fittest actually makes you the weakest, because of that self-serving nature. It sort of handicaps you from being able to relate to anyone else that isn't exactly like you. And of course, if you find someone that's exactly like you, they become tedious to you very quickly, because the two alike, you're not learning from them, you see. Which is why it's good to, again, only my opinion, like, me and Joy are polar opposites, which is good. We've got a lot in common, but more that we don't, and therefore we teach each other, you see. But yeah, narcissism is birthed out of insecurity, and that one in particular is pushed all the time on all of us. Just look out for yourself, fuck everyone else, because they don't care about you. Well, the only reason that is a little bit true, but the reason for that is because everyone is following that exact thing. You see what I'm saying? That's that exact same indoctrination. That's why they don't care about you. You see what I'm saying? Because they're only looking out for themselves, and you're only looking out for, like, in regards to to our survival. I mean, that true survival of the fittest would be to look out for one another, right? Because then they're looking out for you. If that was what we if that was how we were taught to live, everything would be shared out, everything would be there'd be no selfishness. As far as I can tell, there wouldn't be. maybe that is true selflessness, you see. Another two that I forgot to mention was, and I'll wrap this up soon as it's on the hour mark now, yeah, self-destruction is another addiction, you know. Self-harm, again, I believe that to be birthed from blame, shame, regret, your mistakes, you know. But most people that are addicted to self-destruction, they're not only doing it because they believe or feel or think, which is the problem, as I always say, that they deserve it. It makes them feel alive. That's the irony there. Killing themselves, no, the closer they get to death, the more alive they feel, which also ties into the addiction of sensation seeking. But then of course it goes the other way, which works on more of a psychopathic level, which would be the addiction of hurting and harming others, because by doing so it makes you feel powerful. I mean, yeah, it ties back into wrath, but it's not quite the same thing. This is different. This is like this is closer to grandiosity, you know, and you know, like a messiah complex, psychopathy essentially. You know, I mean, even adrenaline is addictive. I've mentioned this in my psychopathy videos, but psychopaths don't just lie because they can and because they don't have the moral compass, you know, to question whether they should or not. You know, they're actually addicted to it. They're addicted to the adrenaline rush that shoots up. It's been coined and named and known as the autoferal impulse, or duping delight is another one. But they are addicted to that. It's not just I got away with it, I tricked you. It actually shoots adrenaline into their brain and they get off on it, and that fucked up. So they're addicted to that, and the irony there is technically that's a natural high. That's why you'll find most psychopaths, sociopaths, sexuopaths, narcissists, most of them, they don't need drugs. They don't want drugs. They don't do drugs. That's enough. That adrenaline's enough, you see. But yeah, as I said, there's many more, I'm sure, but I've tried to aim for the addictions that most, I'd imagine, don't even know exist, don't even question, you know. It goes the other way too. As I said, there's many positive addictions. You can be addicted to learning, to educating yourself, to researching. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But it is addictive, isn't it? You see. So yeah, to finish and finalise, always analyse, dissect and question your urges, your cravings, your addictions, and at the same time, by doing so, you should feel and therefore know whether they're healthy to you and the ones around you. But always remember and never forget that they are addiction is so it can cause so much destruction as well as creation, and it's so elusive. It will convince you that you have the upper hand and that you're in control, and it will pretend to be you. It will pretend to be your conscience, your moral compass. It's not. It's not. It really isn't. Okay? So, do not let it get the best of you, no matter what the addiction is, because it will bring out the worst in you, whatever the addiction is. Love you all.